Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going a bit deeper, looking into Martin Luther King Jr. We want to move past the headlines, the famous speeches, and uncover some maybe lesser known parts of his life and, well, his enduring impact. We've pulled together quite a bit for this: detailed biographies, encyclopedic entries, that sort of thing. Sources that really let us unpack the complexities of his life and his activism.
Exactly. The mission here is really to get beyond those iconic moments we all know. We want to look at how his thinking evolved, the huge challenges he faced, and just how broad his vision for justice actually was. And we think we'll find some surprising connections that make his story even more powerful.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. His birth name was actually Michael King Jr.
Right.
It's often missed that his father, Michael Sr., changed both their names after a trip to Germany in 1934. He was apparently really inspired by Martin Luther, the Reformation leader.
Yeah, that name change itself is significant, isn't it? Sort of embedding them in this history of challenging the status quo. And, those early childhood experiences, they really started shaping his view of race very young.
Like that story with his friend.
Exactly. The white playmate whose parents suddenly said they couldn't play anymore because we are white and you are colored. King said later he was initially determined to hate every white person.
Wow.
Yeah, but then his parents stepped in, instilling that Christian duty to love. It's this tension, between that rightful anger and this call to love that really seems foundational to his whole philosophy later on.
And his father, Martin Sr., he sounds like quite the figure himself. An early role model for resistance, definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
That story about refusing to sit in the back of the shoe store, saying, we either buy shoes sitting here or we won't buy any shoes at all, and then just leaving with young Martin Jr.
Yeah, and he also led a civil rights march in Atlanta way back in 1936. So activism was clearly part of the family fabric. And intellectually, King developed incredibly early. He was memorizing hymns at 5, loved opera, piano, apparently had a huge vocabulary just from reading dictionaries. But even then, as a teenager, he wasn't just accepting things. He was questioning literal church teachings. Famously denied the bodily resurrection of Jesus in Sunday school when he was just 13.
Really? At 13?
Yeah. It just shows that critical thinking, that willingness to challenge, was there from the start. He was searching.
And apparently he had a bit of a stylish side, too. The nickname Tweed or Tweety in high school.
Yeah. Because he was into fashion.
Yeah.
Tweed suits, patent leather shoes. It's kind of a fun detail.
It is. But alongside that, he was clearly developing those incredible speaking skills. Public speaking, debate, really coming into his own as a teenager.
And putting them to use immediately. His first big public speech, that oratorical contest in 1944, he declared, "Black America still wears chains."
Powerful stuff.
Incredibly. And what's really striking is what happened right after. On the bus home, he and his teacher were forced to stand up for white passengers. He called that moment the angriest I have ever been in my life.
Wow. So the injustice he spoke about, he felt it immediately, personally.
Exactly. It wasn't abstract. It was raw, real. That must have solidified his conviction.
Absolutely. And then that same summer, 1944, he goes north for the first time, to Connecticut.
Yes, at 15. Worked on a tobacco farm in Simsbury. His first taste of an integrated environment.
And it had a huge impact, right? He wrote that letter home.
To his father. Said, after we passed Washington, there was no discrimination at all. The white people here are very nice. We go to any place we want to and sit anywhere we want to. You can just feel the impact that contrast must have had.
Yeah, showing him what was possible, shaping that vision for equality.
For sure. Then came college. Morehouse at 19. I imagine graduating college at 19.
Incredible. Then Crozer Theological Seminary.
Right, where he was student body president. And really got into Walter Rauschenbusch's social gospel. That idea that Christian ethics needed to tackle social problems head-on, like poverty, injustice. It really resonated with King.
So faith and action were always linked for him.
Deeply. Apparently he almost married a white woman there too, but was advised against it. A painful decision, sounds like. Then on to Boston University for his PhD in systematic theology.
And there was that later issue with the dissertation, the plagiarism inquiry.
Yeah, in 1991, the inquiry did find some passages were plagiarized, but they decided not to revoke his degree. They felt it still made an intelligent contribution to scholarship.
It's one of those complexities, isn't it? How we view historical figures, their work, the scrutiny.
Right. Doesn't erase the impact, but it's part of the story. Okay, so moving on. Before the big famous campaigns, there was this earlier incident in New Jersey, Mary's Cafe.
Yes, 1950. Mapleshade, New Jersey. He and a classmate and their dates were refused service.
And the owner fired a gun. Yeah, fired it into the air, shouting, "I kill for less." Pretty terrifying. And this was before he formally studied Gandhi's methods. There's even a police report with his signature, M.L. King Jr.
So even then, he was facing down that kind of hostility.
Exactly. And what's interesting is what happened next. They filed a legal complaint with NAACP help. The owner got fined for disorderly conduct, though the discrimination charge was dismissed. It sort of hints at the approach he'd take later, right?
Yeah.
Using legal channels, organizing.
A precursor, definitely. And then, of course, came Montgomery, the bus boycott, 1955-56. That really put him on the national stage.
Absolutely. And it wasn't quick. 385 days. Think about that commitment.
Incredible endurance, and during that time, his home was bombed. He was arrested.
Right, arrested for driving 30 in a 25 zone. Clearly harassment.
Yeah.
But the boycotts held, and ultimately that Supreme Court ruling, Browder v. Gale, came down, ending bus segregation. A huge victory.
And that victory led directly to forming the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, didn't it?
Yes, in 1957. The idea was to leverage the power, the moral authority, and the organizing networks of black churches to push for civil rights using nonviolent protest. They drew heavily on Christian principles, but also on Gandhi's techniques, his satyagraha.
So strategic nonviolence rooted in faith.
Precisely. That became the SCLC's blueprint.
Okay, so then fast forward a bit to 1960. King goes back to Atlanta as co-pastor with his father, which was apparently controversial.
Well, yeah, and the governor, Ernest Vandiver, was openly hostile. Then King gets arrested, supposedly for driving without a license.
Which led to that hard labor sentence.
Right, because his lawyer had agreed to a plea deal with probation earlier. So when King participated in a sit-in at Rich's department store, they threw the book at him, 4 months hard labor.
And that caused national outrage.
It did. And this is where politics really intersects. John F. Kennedy, who was running for president, got involved. His intervention helped get King released after just 2 days.
And that influenced the election.
Definitely. King's father publicly switched his endorsement to Kennedy. It showed how central civil rights was becoming to national politics.
Now, before the big success in Birmingham, there was the Albany movement in 61-62. You mentioned it was seen as, well, less successful.
Yeah, King himself called it a key lesson, though. The police chief there, Laurie Pritchett, was quite shrewd. He used non-brutal methods and even arranged for King's fine to be paid when King chose jail. King famously said, "We witnessed being kicked out of jail."
Billy Graham apparently bailed him out.
That's what came out later, yeah. Pritchett avoided creating those moments of high-profile confrontation that galvanized support elsewhere.
So Albany taught them about tactics, which they then applied in Birmingham in 63.
Exactly. Birmingham was intentionally confrontational. Those non-violent tactics, they were designed to provoke a response. And then the Children's Crusade, bringing young people into the protests.
That must have been controversial, too.
It was. But the images. Police Commissioner Bull Connor unleashing high-pressure hoses, police dogs on children and young adults.
It was televised. Shocking.
Absolutely shocking. It horrified many white Americans and really unified black Americans. It laid the brutality bare for everyone to see.
And it was during an arrest there, his 13th arrest.
13th out of 29.
Yeah, that he wrote Letter from Birmingham Jail.
Smuggle out on scraps of paper, where he wrote those powerful lines, "Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed."
And compared segregation laws to Nazi Germany.
Right. Saying everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal. A stark warning about unjust laws.
And Birmingham worked, didn't it?
It did. King's reputation soared. Bull Connor lost his job. The Jim Crow signs started coming down. And it undeniably paved the way for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It showed nonviolent pressure could force real change.
Then came the March on Washington in 63. For jobs and freedom, another huge moment.
Monumental. Though there was tension behind the scenes. President Kennedy was initially worried about it, though he came around. And you had critics like Malcolm X calling it the farce on Washington.
Right, different perspectives within the movement.
Definitely. But then King delivered that speech. "I have a dream."
17 minutes long, apparently, and partly improvised.
That's the story. Mahalia Jackson supposedly prompted him to tell them about the dream, and he just went off script, speaking about judging people by the content of their character, not skin color.
And the impact was just immense.
Undeniable. It captured the moral heart of the movement and really pushed forward the drive for legislation.
Then Selma, 1965, the voting rights movement, which led to Bloody Sunday.
Yeah, that horrific violence on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, state troopers attacking peaceful marchers, just brutal.
But King's speech afterwards, how long, not long. That's where he used that famous line.
The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Such a powerful expression of hope and determination, even after witnessing such brutality.
Incredible resilience. And his focus wasn't just the South, right? He expanded his work.
Absolutely. In '64, he was in St. Augustine, Florida. Interestingly, working with a local leader, Robert Haling, whose group had actually advocated armed self-defense previously, shows King's willingness to engage across different parts of the movement.
And then Chicago in '66, the housing movement.
Yeah, tackling segregation in the North, and the resistance there was fierce. People throwing bottles, screaming. King himself got hit by a brick.
Wow. It showed the problem wasn't just Southern laws. It was deeply embedded prejudice everywhere.
Exactly. It was systemic North and South.
Now let's talk about Vietnam. His opposition to the war became very strong, very public.
It did. He initially held back, worried it would hurt the civil rights cause. But by 1967, he couldn't stay silent. That Beyond Vietnam speech, calling the U.S. government the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today.
That must have caused a huge backlash.
Oh, massive. He lost support from President Johnson, from many white allies, even from parts of the press. Life magazine called the speech demagogic slander. The Washington Post said he diminished his usefulness.
A heavy price to pay.
Definitely. But for King, it was becoming clear these issues were linked. Racism, poverty, militarism, he called them the giant triplets. He saw the war diverting resources and attention from domestic problems. And privately, he was expressing support for democratic socialism. His analysis was broadening, becoming more radical.
Which led to the Poor People's Campaign in '68.
Right. His vision for this multiracial army of the poor to march on Washington demand an economic bill of rights. He was talking about guaranteed basic income, citing economists like Henry George.
A really ambitious, systemic vision.
Hugely ambitious. But it also caused friction within the movement. B.R. Rustin, a key advisor for years, actually resigned from the campaign. He worried the goals were too broad, maybe unrealistic, and could lead to even more backlash against the poor.
So internal debates about strategy again. Okay, let's shift gears slightly, because throughout all this, King was under intense surveillance.
Unbelievably intense. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. They had this COINTELPRO operation specifically targeting King. Hoover personally ordered efforts to neutralize him.
Neutralize. Chilling word. Wiretapping his home, his office.
Extensive wiretapping. Initially approved by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, citing supposed communist ties. But the FBI itself later admitted, by '76, they never found any evidence King or the SCLC were involved with communist groups.
So the justification was flimsy at best.
It seemed so. And it got darker. In 1964, the FBI sent him that anonymous letter, threatening. It came with a tape recording, supposedly of his extramarital affairs.
Trying to blackmail him, or worse?
King thought they were trying to drive him to suicide. The letter suggested he step aside. It's just psychological warfare, really.
Yeah.
On top of everything else he was facing.
The pressure must have been unbearable. Which brings us, tragically, to Memphis, April 4th, 1968.
Yeah. He was there supporting striking sanitation workers. They were protesting unequal pay, racial discrimination, and he was assassinated on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel.
Just 39 years old. And that detail from the autopsy.
That he had the heart of a 60-year-old? His biographer, Taylor Branch, attributed it directly to the immense, unrelenting stress of his life's work.
The toll it took, the aftermath was chaotic, wasn't it?
Devastating. Riots broke out in cities across the country. Robert F. Kennedy gave that incredibly moving impromptu speech in Indianapolis, pleading for nonviolence just hours after King was killed. And the Poor People's Campaign, they tried to carry on, setting up Resurrection City on the National Mall in D.C.
A testament to his vision, even in grief. And at his funeral, they played part of his last sermon.
Yes, the Drum Major Instinct sermon from February 4th that year, where he said, you know, if you're going to remember me, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness.
So powerful, defining his own legacy.
Absolutely. Though controversy around his death didn't end there, James Earl Ray was convicted, but conspiracy theories have always swirled.
The King family themselves pursued a civil case, right?
They did. In 1999, they won a wrongful death lawsuit against Lloyd Jowers, a Memphis restaurant owner, and other unknown co-conspirators. They believe there was a wider plot.
But the official investigations didn't find that.
No. A Department of Justice investigation in 2000 found no evidence of conspiracy, and Jauer's own family later said he made up the story for money. It remains a painful, complex part of the story.
For sure. But his legacy, the concrete impact, is just immense.
Undeniable. The Civil Rights Act of 1968, the Fair Housing Act, passed just days after his assassination, driven in part by his martyrdom.
And the MLK Day federal holiday, established in '86, observed everywhere by 2000. The King Center continuing his work.
Exactly. His influence is woven into the fabric of the nation now. Though, as we discuss legacy, it's important to touch on complexities too, like the issue of LGBTQ+ rights.
Right. Coretta Scott King became a vocal supporter.
She firmly believed Martin would have supported LGBTQ+ rights. But their daughter Bernice holds a different view. And we have that 1958 advice column King wrote for Ebony, where he called homosexuality a problem needing psychiatric treatment.
Which reflects the common understanding or misunderstanding of that era.
Precisely. It highlights how even visionary leaders are products of their time and how societal understanding evolves. It doesn't diminish his other work, but it's part of the full picture.
And the official recognition he received? It's staggering.
Nobel Peace Prize in '64, youngest ever at the time, 35 years old. And he gave the prize money to the movement.
Amazing. Posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom, Congressional Gold Medal, Time Person of the Year, even a Grammy.
Yeah, for the recording of his Why I Oppose the War in Vietnam speech, and now the plan to put the I Have a Dream speech on the $5 bill.
His influence really did go global, didn't it? Beyond challenging Jim Crow, beyond economic justice. His message resonated everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. You see echoes of his work in places like the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Movement. His framework for nonviolent resistance had international reach.
It really did. From fighting segregation in the Deep South to challenging global militarism, the scope of his work was just enormous.
Which I think leaves us with a pretty important question, especially today. In our world, which feels increasingly polarized, how can we learn from King's approach? His commitment to nonviolence, even when facing brutality, his willingness to adapt, to broaden his focus, even when it was controversial. How might that guide us now as we confront the injustices of our own time?
That's a powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and legacy. We really hope it offered some new perspectives on this incredible figure.